Roger Williams University is hosting a crisis management seminar on May 3rd at their Providence campus. Crises, whether a natural disaster, cyber attack, or financial instability, can have severe repercussions if not handled properly. This is where crisis management plays a pivotal role. Join Roger Williams MBA students and expert speakers to learn how to prepare for the unexpected. The program is totally free and open to the public. You can register online at rwu.edu/events/crisis-management-symposium.
This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast.
Well, good morning, everybody, on this day after Election Day in what was a complete and utter rejection of culture war garbage by Rhode Islanders, as Democrats hold all 5 of the state offices and both of the congressional seats. And look, across the country, obviously there were some big gains for Republicans in terms of congressional seats, in terms of governors, so on and so forth. But the red wave that was anticipated, it just didn't come. It just didn't play out that way. So across the country, the trend as a whole that was predicted just simply did not materialize. And here in Rhode Island, where there was some hype and some expectation that, hey, this is the year that there's a viable congressional candidate, this is the year that there's a viable gubernatorial candidate for the Republicans, it also simply did not play out. And you know what? For the Democrats, you got to feel good about the way that this thing went, not just because of the victories, but because of some of the margins. I mean, let's start with just some of the numbers here. Governor McKee, who received 203,915 total votes as of now, and that doesn't include some of the additional mail ballots and military ballots and so forth. 57.8% of the vote went to him. 39% to Ashley Kalus. 39%. So when you run for office, you are going to get 35% even automatically in any election, just by being a protest vote, just by being an alternative. I mean, that is the standard assessment of just about every single election. I mean, take a look at Pat Cordelesa, who got 40.5% of the vote in the Secretary of State race, handily defeated by Greg Amore, who got nearly 60%. So Ashley Kalus, who came to Rhode Island just over a year ago, has spent $5 million of her own money, ends up with 39% of the vote. That's about, well, I didn't do the math, and I'm not going to do it right here on the fly, but you can do it. So if you figure you get 35% just for putting your name on the ballot, for $5 million, she picked up an additional 4%. So a stinging defeat for Ashley Kalus. Hey, look, obviously the Democratic Party, the machine that is behind it, there's a strong get out the vote effort. There's a lot of factors that go into this, but when you look at a 57.8% tabulation for Governor McKee, that indicates an endorsement on behalf of the people of the state. And, the governor, I was on the radio last night on WPRO. We were doing the election night stuff. And as these numbers were coming in, I mean, it was early that it was obvious that the governor was going to pull this off. But as the numbers continued to grow, you thought, wow, this must feel good. Given everything that this campaign, the mudslinging, the utter nonsense that this campaign devolved into at times, I just think the governor must have felt extraordinary about this scenario. And I saw the governor last night, and I'll tell you what, he's already hyped on policy. He's already hyped on ideas. He's already hyped on some of the things that he's been working on his entire political career and taking them to the next level. And that's where his head was at. He was not spiking the football, none of that. So I think the people of Rhode Island know, and even those who didn't vote last night, my guess is that there isn't this like silent majority that didn't turn out to vote or something like that. Rhode Islanders, by and large, are showing that, certainly with exceptions, and there are certainly pockets where things are not playing out in an equitable way or playing out in a way that maybe you're comfortable with. But by and large, Rhode Islanders showed last night that they want to continue on in the general direction that we're going with many of the ideas that are being put forth by the McKee administration. Also looking at the governor's race, the 3 outsider candidates, if you will. How about this? Zach Hurwitz. He's like the 18-year-old kid at URI who ran for governor on a platform of wanting to provide free school lunches and breakfast. He got 1.3%. Paul Rihanna, remember him? And Libertarian Eliza Gizzarelli, each under 1% in terms of their vote totals, and there were about 1,000 write-in votes. So Governor McKee handily defeating Ashley Kalus. At the lieutenant governor level, there was some hype, and where does this, when I say there was some hype, where is it coming from? It's coming from talk radio. It's coming from Twitter. It's coming from conversations. It's coming from rallies. It's coming from, nervousness on behalf of some political insiders. There was some hype that there may be an upset in the lieutenant governor's race. Not even close. Sabina Matos, 51% of the vote. Aaron Gukian, 43.3% of the vote. Matos easily defeating Aaron Gukian. And look, again, it's a scenario in which people, whether you're voting party line, you're voting personality, whatever the case may be, for all the talk that, Sabina Matos is unqualified, she's, imagine if she had to take over as governor, she's this Providence progressive that's out of control. All that fell on deaf ears for the most part. Just didn't work. I already mentioned the Secretary of State race, Attorney General Noronha, he got over 60%. Now, the treasurer race, that was pretty close at one point. It ended up not being. James Diosa getting 54.2%. James Lathrop, 45.7%. Lathrop was a good candidate. He rejected Donald Trump. He was a fiscal conservative, social moderate that just had a different vision for the role of the treasurer's office. And I think he ran a responsible campaign that was, the type of campaign. Look, if Republicans actually want to win in Rhode Island, they're not going to win playing into fear-mongering and culture war garbage. Straight up. It's just, you've got to make a decision to say, you know what, my persona, my whole campaign, my platform is not going to be based around fear-mongering. It's going to be based around ideas. Now, Lathrop, as treasurer, as a standalone in that regard, not able to generate the type of energy or hype to actually win this thing. But getting 45% of the vote puts him, in terms of state offices, running a campaign based on ideas and not culture war garbage. He was the best performing of the Republicans. And, and I wonder if they'll even take anything from that. If there's going to be this, type of, analysis from the party itself to say, the mail ballots, we got there was some kind of steal here. I mean, who knows what? You're already seeing some chatter that is suggesting that this was somehow, unethical, that the Democrats won this thing. I mean, folks, this is a rejection of culture war trash. That's exactly what this is. Now, how about the congressional races? David Cicilline, no surprise. I mean, he just smoked Alan Waters. He got basically 64% of the vote in Congressional District 1. No surprise there. Alan Waters, 36%. So he got 1% above that 35% margin that you get just for writing your name on the ballot. A complete beat down there. But Congressional District 2, right? The race that had all the national attention, Alan Fung, he's going to go and be a moderate voice for Rhode Island. He's going to be in the caucus. He's going to vote for Speaker McCarthy or vote for a Speaker McCarthy. But, at the end of the day, he's going to be a moderate. He's going to work for Rhode Island, blah, blah, blah. All that positioning, it just didn't play out. Alan's a soulful human being. If you dislike his politics, whatever the case may be, he's a guy who, he has heart, and he does love the state, and he's from the state, and he cares about people, and he's likable. But when you talk about Social Security, when you talk about abortion, and you talk about some of the other issues on the table, whether it be weapons, whether it be, things that really didn't come up much in debates or in conversation, but just this other, this culture war stuff. Rhode Islanders were like in Congressional District 2, which is a conservative-leaning district. They were like, no, we're not going to be a part of it. We understand we may, as Democrats, may be in the minority in Congress. Well, so what? We're not going to be a part of that. We're not going to just concede that that's going to be the case and put someone in the caucus just so we have a quote-unquote ambassador. We're going to oppose it. We're going to oppose this stuff. And Seth Magaziner at 50.3% of the vote, beats Alan Fung, who got 46.9%. And Bill Gilbert, the moderate, he got 5,000-something votes. He got under 3%. A stinging defeat for Alan Fung, his third consecutive defeat in a major statewide race. We'll say, call it a statewide race, even though it's a congressional district. And where does Alan Fung go from here? What does his political future look like? How's he going to run for Congress in 2 years, right? Should he have run for governor for a third time and gone for a Bruce Sunland? Could Alan Fung, instead of an Ashley Kalis, had made a run at this stuff? Is it possible? It's very, very, very difficult to say if that would have had any sort of impact on the governor's race had Alan Fung been in there. But I know you would have seen a closer margin than what we actually saw play out. So Seth Magaziner is going to Congress, and Rhode Island holds all 5 state offices in the Democratic hands and the congressional seats in Democratic hands. That's what the people decided, and they decided it handily. Now, there are some interesting General Assembly races. By the way, all 3 of the statewide bond questions passed. The URI Blue Economy Facility Bond, the School Building Bond, and the Green Bond. You may have heard those episodes here on the podcast that we broke those down. They all passed. A couple of local races of note. District 39. Now, this is the district that Justin Price, remember Justin Price? He was at January 6th. He refused to answer questions about it. Well, he right now is trailing Megan Cotter, who put up a good fight against him back in 2020, by 4 votes. So the Democratic Megan Cotter, as of right now, as of the most recent posting, which was 11:06 p.m. last night, with a 4-vote lead. Obviously, that is way too soon to properly call. There's going to obviously be a recount there, and there's obviously going to be, potentially anyway, additional mail ballots to come in and so on and so forth. But that's a race to watch. So with that, also the Dennis Algier seat flipped to Democrat. Blake Filippi's vacated seat, that goes Democrat with Tina Spears with a big win. Democrats, by and large, performing very well. Rhode Islanders rejecting culture war nonsense. Now, I want to look here at the Jen Rourke seat, if I can pull that up here. How about this? Yeah, that's the Dennis Algier seat. Victoria Gu, people said, oh, she's way too progressive for the district. She smoked Weston Place and Caswell Cook down there in South County, in Washington County. So Democrats, how about Tiara Mack? I don't have that in front of me. She got something like 83%. 83% in Senate 6, annihilating Adriana Bonilla in that race. So for all the talk of, she's the twerking senator, we're going to vote her out, we're going to put all this effort in, we're going to get rid of her, please. It just simply did not play out last night. Now, for Democrats that want to spike the football, for people who want to say, hey, congratulations, look, you should have your moment. You should have your moment, and there's plenty of reason to feel this morning to feel good about it. But there was one race that was a bit concerning, and that's State Senate 29. That's the Jen Rourke race. Jen Rourke, remember her? She's one of the co-chairs of the Rhode Island Political Cooperative. She who appeared to be appeared to be punched in the face by her then Republican challenger back at that abortion rally. Remember that video I posted? Well, she lost in Warwick in District 29 to Anthony DeLuca, 52.4% to 47.3%. She lost by about 500 votes or so. Now, in that race, there was a political action committee that a Democrat former party chair had orchestrated against her. So, spike the football if you want, but remember, the Democratic Party also said, hey, we don't want this powerful progressive woman in the Senate. We're afraid of that idea. We don't want her in there. So we'd rather work with, now this isn't the Democratic Party as a whole. This is a person in the Democratic Party. But let's be honest about how this stuff works. Institutional Democrats at some level said, we'd rather have an Anthony Philip DeLuca, a Republican in there, than the progressive Jen Rourke. So there's still imperfections in this whole thing if you're looking at it from a complete equity standpoint. Okay? But by and large, my takeaway, good job, Rhode Island, not being fooled by utter nonsense. If these races, governor, whatever it was, especially governor, if they were based on facts and based on a conversation around issues and approach, may the best person win. May the best person win. But it definitely came down to mudslinging and fear-mongering in a way that Rhode Islanders said, you know what, that's not what we want. That's not where we want to go with this election. They made that decision last night or in early voting, and that's what you got. And now Governor McKee will have a full term, a 4-year term, for things to play out. And look, he's got some work to do. He's got to repair his relationship with the media. I mean, all this business with him going back and forth with Ed Fitzpatrick, complaining about the way questions were asked. He doesn't have a good relationship with Channel 12, Target 12 over the ILO group. He had that whole thing where he called a press conference to refute a Providence Journal story. He's got to repair his relationship with the media. I don't know how you do that. I think obviously the press office is a place to start. I think that the media also has to be objective and try to put personal feelings of annoyance aside when assessing the governor going forward. But a big night for Democrats in Rhode Island last night. The energy at the Graduate, I almost said the Biltmore, and basically is still the Biltmore, right? Was intense when I got there. I went down, like I said, after the radio show, about 11 o'clock, long after the speeches and all that business. And people felt victorious. People felt as if they made the case to the state of Rhode Island, and the state of Rhode Island made their decision based on the direction they want to go. And hey, look, like I've said now a million times on this podcast and in a tweet and so on and so forth, this culture war stuff, man, it's going to work in some places. I don't think it's working as well as far right extremists want it to. When you look at the national results, I mean, look at Fetterman defeating Dr. Oz in Pennsylvania. Look at Kathy Hochul defeating Lee Zeldin for governor in New York, although I'm not sure that Zeldin has conceded yet. He had some kind of pipe dream that he was going to get a bunch of votes from Suffolk County, which, he would have to have made up like almost 1 million votes from those tabulations to even have a chance. The culture war stuff is, and what do I mean by culture war? Fear-mongering around crime, fear-mongering around, so-called Judeo-Christian values, fear-mongering around trans rights, gay rights, fear-mongering around the empowerment of youth, fear-mongering around, restricting firearms at a certain level, fear-mongering around abortion rights, fear-mongering in general about, some kind of conspiracy operation that runs the whole world and the United States, fear-mongering around how economic policy is created and executed and where it comes from, completely ignoring the role that the Fed plays in all of this, which is an area that Democrats could have done a better job pointing out. But someone last night told me, oh, that's too cerebral. Well, you know what? I don't think so. I think people are ready to be smarter about their politics and understand where things come from. The level of information and the way that issues are put forth can shift. In the age of the internet, people can become way more informed about specific issues and policies. You do not need to be a graduate of Oxford University to understand this stuff. Everybody that has a modicum of interest in politics can go deeper now. And when you go deeper, and you've got people who are, again, not necessarily running for office, but are in the inner circle or in the orbit of candidates, talking about litter boxes being put in schools so that kids that quote unquote identify as cats can use them instead of going to the bathroom, and the school mandating it based on some kind of, false, complete hoax on a national level, a complete joke, and people buying into this kind of stuff. The xenophobia that we've seen play out, that is just disgraceful. The wrong direction that has been taken time and time again by so many people who are concerned about major issues. Look, folks, there are major issues. I'm not saying that, everybody on the left has got it right or anything like that. There are major issues. I mean, you got to be a fool to not look at the situation on the border and not say, number one, it's a humanitarian crisis. Number two, there's a sustainability to it that is completely not there and needs to be revisited. But the answer isn't also, let's create a culture war around it. Let's create a fear-mongering notion that, if you're coming from, you're fleeing some kind of persecution in a South American country, most of which the disruption and the disorder there was, by the way, created by, policies of the United States in the 1980s. But let's not even go there. But, that somehow you're sneaking across the border in the middle of the night, you're bringing fentanyl in, and, it's a conspiracy. China's making the fentanyl, and they hand it off to some kind of caravan. The caravan brings it across the south border. I mean, please, you got to address the issues in a mature and realistic way. Look at it from, there is a crisis of fentanyl in this country. Where is it coming from? Where is it manufactured? How does it enter into the country? Let's look at it. Let's work together on this stuff. Are you kidding me? Let's work together on these major issues. Instead, you try for the lowest common denominator and you build a brand around it. And you know what? You get some victories, but by and large, it fell flat. It fell flat. And when you look here in Rhode Island, Republicans get caught up in it because it's inescapable. It's inescapable. Now, Alan Fung tap danced around the Trump question and a lot of these issues as best as he could. But at the same time, you wonder, should Alan Fung have just owned it and say, hey, look, you know what? Yeah, I'm a Republican. This is what the Republican agenda is. Take it or leave it. Take it or leave it. This is what it's all about. Instead of trying to tap dance. Now, both Fung and Kalis, if you look at their literature, if you look at their signage, Kalis with the teal and the light blue, Alan Fung, he had the blue wave on his signage. They were not playing the role of Republican in terms of image. They were trying to paint themselves as something different, as some kind of, moderate that happens to be a Republican. And, hey, we're the opposition party. And that's all well and good if you actually play into that fully. But you can't do it from a half-baked perspective. And look, if Alan Fung, he's in the quicksand because what's he going to do? Is he going to say, I'm not going to support Speaker McCarthy? Well, he's not going to get the millions and millions of outside dollars that came in to support him. So then he becomes, what is he going to do? Run as an independent? Maybe? I don't know. I don't think that would obviously it would not have worked. I'm sure it wouldn't have worked. Alan Fung, the campaign that he ran did have a lot of quote unquote positive ads. He's high-fiving people at Twin Oaks. He's a lot of his social media content. He's high-fiving kids at, Cranston West football games, whatever it is. And I applaud him for that, But at the end of the day, you're going to be a part of a party that is engaged. First of all, never mind the January 6th stuff. Forget about that for a second. Some of the policies that Republicans are pushing on the national level are outside of parliamentary politics. You can make an argument that some people on the Democratic side are doing the same thing. Except for the Republicans have a much stronger foothold in that extremist zone. Rhode Island doesn't want to be a part of that, and it showed it last night. It's imperfect. You didn't get everything you wanted if you're looking at it from a progressive standpoint last night. You didn't get anything just about you wanted if you're looking at it from a Republican standpoint. The Democratic machine, the institutional Democrats, they are extremely satisfied. They're ecstatic with what took place last night. And I think Rhode Island should be as well, because now we're past this election cycle. And look, how boring, how tired is it? Okay, now you roll up your sleeves, you get to work. You know what? But let's actually do it this time. The one thing about Governor McKee is that in the time I've known him since he was lieutenant governor, and he was the first guest on the Bartholomew Town podcast, and I've been covering him ever since, is that he's open to coalition building. He's open to different voices. He's open to, bringing people into the huddle that disagree with him or at least diverge from him on execution of policy. That's what it's going to take to get Rhode Island truly on track. And I think Rhode Island took the right step last night. I really do. I think that looking at the situation we're in right now, I think in terms of the reality of this country, we need to get to a point where we are governing, not fighting culture wars. You've got an issue with a book that's in a school library, take it up with the school. Or say, hey, kid A, kid B, don't read that book. That's a parental decision. And then deal with the just like, kid, you tell a kid not to listen to a certain record and the kid listens to the record after all. You make the decision whether or not you want to address that. There are things that make people uncomfortable. And those things oftentimes are what moves us forward as a society. Not all of them. Sometimes it's just to bust people's chops. Sometimes it's going too far. I admit it. I've done it. I've gone too far. I've realized, what? It does damage to progress sometimes to push an issue so far. And look, I don't hate anybody in this race. People want to, I see some of the comments directed towards Ashley Kalis. I'm like, you know what? I don't agree with that at all. Ashley Kalis is a smart woman. She came to Rhode Island, I believe, to begin a political career that she wants to continue outside of Rhode Island. Her big picture plan is not disrupted by a defeat in the governor's race. And I have no idea what kind of financial situation she and her husband have going. But I'm certain that though she spent $5 million on this, that she is not going to be broke next week. Well, I say I'm certain, I'm pretty sure that she's in a position where she, maybe not in Rhode Island, probably not Rhode Island. I mean, she said, I want to keep helping to work towards a better situation for Rhode Island families. Okay, she doesn't have to be in Rhode Island to do that. You can just make that statement and say, what I'm doing with my career next will trickle down to Rhode Island or something. Not spiking the football. We're not saying, what a bunch of morons. I'm saying playing into culture war stuff at any level is a failed effort here in Rhode Island. It's a small group of hysterical people, for the most part, that are, completely unplugged from reality and want to paint themselves as a victim. And it's time to start focusing our politics on equity, okay, on infrastructure, on education, healthcare, all right? Things that actually impact people on a day-to-day life, on a day-to-day basis in their lives. And I think that with this election cycle being over, we at least have a shot at doing that. I want to thank all of you that have been a part of this election season. For me, it's been a personal, quite an experience. All right? It's been quite an experience. I stood with Dr. Munoz in April 2021. Fast forward to last fall, standing with Seth Magaziner in Pawtucket as he announced his run for governor. And I remember at the time, I wasn't sure what I was going to do with my career, with even staying in Rhode Island. I had some offers, both here in Rhode Island and outside of Rhode Island, and I was kind of looking at things. And I remember when I stood there with Magaziner that day, I said, you know what? I'm not going anywhere. I want to be here for this political season. This is going to be an important political season for the state. This is where I want to be. This is where I'm going to be. Signed with WPRO. Worked hard to develop more sponsorships and partnerships for Bartholomew Town, which I want to thank the sponsors here, the University of Rhode Island Online, Pure Vita Labs, Commonwealth Care Alliance. Okay? And all of you out there. Those of you who are supporters on Patreon, patreon.com/BartholomewTown. $3 a month if you can. $3 a month if you can do it, And believe me, I'm not driving around in a Mercedes, or anything like that. We're trying to keep this thing going. But I want to thank you, the listeners, through the debate series and the primary and here in this general election, through the many, many people who joined the program, either as candidates or analysts, and for giving this platform a shot, because we saw enormous growth over this election cycle on Bartholomew Town. And you know what? You got other options out there. You got radio. You got other people trying podcasts. And those of you who stuck with us, those of you who have come on board, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for that, because it's what keeps this thing going. Where do we go now? Well, there's still a lot of election stuff, kind of looking back on what happened, trying to make sense of it. There'll be some newly elected interviews, some more analysis, okay? I'm also going to be doing some exit interviews, which I'm really looking forward to, and I think are actually going to be somewhat emotional, that are already on the books. So stay tuned for those. And next Tuesday, all accounts are down at Mar-a-Lago. Donald Trump is going to announce his candidacy for president of the United States. We're less than 2 years away from a presidential election. We'll always be Rhode Island's podcast of record. We'll always be focused on Rhode Island. We'll always be doing that. But you're going to see a lot more national coverage in 2023 and 24. International as well. And you know what? I'm going to try to get back into more of the interviews with media personalities and artists and musicians and interesting people. I miss doing that. And we spent basically the entire year focused on this election. So we're going to return to what we've established as a major part of this show. We are. And you know what? I'm glad this election cycle is over for a lot of different reasons, but mostly I'm glad because I was tired of worrying that we were going to somehow get duped into falling into the snake pit that culture war garbage represents. And we're not out of it completely, but we are more than torso above the mud as we look towards 2023 and the beginning of a new day in Rhode Island politics. Have a great week, everybody. I probably will have another episode this week. If not, like I said, a lot of stuff planned starting next week. This is the Bartholomew Town Podcast. Have a great day. With the increasing legalization of cannabis across the country, including most recently Rhode Island, the cannabis industry is growing at a rapidly accelerating pace. If you are already in the industry or wondering what is the best path to break into the cannabis field, well, the University of Rhode Island has a program to help educate you in the evolving space. Fully accredited by URI's College of Pharmacy, the online certificate program covers topics related to product development, chemical analysis and testing, and patient and customer therapeutics. The next application deadline for the spring 2023 session is November 29th, and courses start January 10th. Join them at 2 upcoming info sessions and learn more at uri.edu/online/cannabis or give them a call at 401-874-5280.
At HealthSource RI for Employers, we provide access to health insurance to more than 1,100 local businesses and nonprofits, and 96% of them renew through us every year. Maybe it's our choice of 19 different health plans, our 10 years of customizing solutions, or our one local team of dedicated experts helping employers find quality health insurance. See how our numbers stack up for you. Learn more at healthsourceri.com/employers.